by some amazing guests. We have Dr. Yaqub Mirza, as well as Dr. Murad. Inshallah, we're going to be discussing Dr. Mirza's new book, which is called 5 Pillars to Prosperity. So this was a book that I was really excited to read a couple of times. Let me go ahead and introduce our speakers of the day. Inshallah. So today, our webinar is actually co-sponsored by the United Theological Seminary of the Twin Cities. And you may know that there's a partnership between our two seminaries. There was an MOU signed in 2020, which created a joint degree in which interreligious chaplaincy, with interreligious chaplaincy with Islamic focus. So basically you can take 6 classes from TISA and then continue on with United Theological Seminary and get your graduate degree there. Those of you who are new to learning about TISA, our vision is a world constantly bettered by religious scholarship and ethical leadership. And our mission is to cultivate a generation of world-class doers and thinkers who lead from an Islamic paradigm while engaging contemporary challenges and opportunities. And the team here at TISA really tries their best to fulfill this vision and mission and deliver on that. So today is our second co-sponsored book talk with United Theological Seminary. We are joined by the author of 5 Pillars of Prosperity, Essentials of Faith-Based Wealth Building by Dr. Yaqub Mirza. A little bit about the author. He was the president and CEO of Sterling Management Group, the chairman of the BOT of Amana Mutual Funds. He was on the board of directors of the University Islamic Financial Corporation and a former member of the board of George Mason University Foundation. He was on the board of trustees and the executive committee and chair of the academic affairs committee of Shenandoah University. He's also the president and trustee of the Center for Islam and the Contemporary World at Shenandoah University, a member of the Council of Advisors and Muslim Philanthropy Initiative at the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy of Indiana University. He holds a PhD in physics and a master's in teaching science from the University of Texas at Dallas. Also, we have our discussant, Dr. Munjid Murad, who is also faculty at the United Theological Seminary of the Twin Cities. And Dr. Murad is an assistant professor of world religions and intercultural studies. He has a master's of environmental management from Yale School of the Environment, which he attained in 2012, where he studied religion and ecology, and a doctor of theology degree from Harvard Divinity School that he attained in 2022. And honestly, I really enjoyed reading this book a couple of times. Dr. Mirza, my husband and I actually encouraged our college-age kids to go ahead and read it themselves. It's a very thorough book that talks about wealth and prosperity, income and spending from both a dunya and an akhirah perspective. It's a very A to Z comprehensive manual. And in the book, Dr. Mirza talks about 5 pillars. The first one is earning. Okay, and so of course our earnings have to be halal, and Dr. Mirza talks about all different aspects of that. He talks about saving and how saving can be good. It's not that we have to spend everything we have. It can also be something that we can use to earn good in this world in the akhirah. He talked about investing, which was, I think, very good for people who are in earlier stages in life to learn about investing. And Dr. Mirza actually brings in a wealth of experience and wisdom from his, lifelong experiences, as in his industry. And so this was very interesting for me. And I think that people should really, learn a lot from this part. This is the investing section. And then he talked about spending and how, how to spend wisely. And so this is also an excellent chapter, beneficial. And then he talks about giving and how that is also part of our deen and our dunya. And so I'm going to go ahead and let Dr. Mirza talk about his book, inshallah. Dr. Mirza, are you there? Oh, I think you're muted, Dr. Mirza.
Mute. Thank you. Dr.
Wonderful.
Murad, thank you so much.
And inshallah, we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much. MashaAllah, Dr. Islam, you have done a wonderful job in preparing these slides and introducing the subject better. I just wonder what can I add more to it, but I will try. I just want to mention that, I learned quite a few of these things from my father, especially that we should not borrow. And that kind of let me develop several ways of avoiding debt. And thank God in our life, we have not borrowed, and we just lived within our means, and we have been able to, make our ends meet and do things which everybody else wants to do. So what motivated me to write this book? I used to teach some classes on entrepreneurship, investing, financial planning here at Fairfax Institute. And some of the students, they said, these ideas are so good. Why would you not like to put in the form of a book? So I did that. And I wasn't sure really that this is a book worth publishing. And I asked some of my colleagues, Dr. John Esposito of Georgetown University was one of them, Governor John Sununu, which he was staff of President Bush, the father, he was one of them. And they all encouraged me that, yes, I should, write this book and publish it. So I have a summary of the book, which says, before you speak, listen. Before you write, think. Before you spend, earn. Before you invest, investigate. Before you criticize, wait. Before you pray, forgive. Before you quit, try. Before you retire, save. Before you die, give. And so that really kind of summarizes this book. As I talked about the debt, my father used to tell me that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with his mercy, will forgive us all our sins, except two. One is if I borrowed money from someone and I did not return, or if I harmed somebody and I did not apologize. So that really made a huge impact on me. And then my wife and myself, we consider education. I give it a very high priority, and we asked our children to excel and get higher education as much as they can, because as you all know, education is key to everything we do. And once we have education, we can stand on our own feet. This book, while I'm Muslim, I wrote it for Muslims, but I have tried to reach out to Old Testament, New Testament, and try to find commonalities and ways and means that how I can compare. So Islam recognizes both Torah and the New Testament. The text from these scriptures are cited in the Quran. The Christians believe the New Testament was completion of the Old Testament of Judaism. So Muslims believe the Quran is the final completion of these books, and Muhammad is the last prophet of the messenger of God. All three religions believe that God, the origin and the source of all that exists, is just and is also merciful. He has provided basic rules for our guidance so that we may be good, righteous, and by his grace, we are given the strength to be righteous. As Dr. Islam pointed out, the first pillar talks about earnings. And as you can tell, the earning is a very important part. If you don't earn, we have not much to save or much to invest, and then forget about spending and giving. Prophet Muhammad has mentioned to strive to earn a livelihood through the right means is an obligation after the obligation of prayer. Bread earned by one's own labor is the best of all things. So you can read through the earnings. It's very important. I've talked about entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship in the earnings section as well. Savings is very crucial, and I request that we should make savings as a habit. Prophet used to urge his companions to be prudent by not spending all that they had. And if you look at the example of Hazrat Yusuf, which is the Bible as well as the Quran, it basically means that at the time of plenty, we should save. At the time of need, we should spend. And that really is the key to what I'm going to discuss or what I'm discussing. So there is general saying that a penny saved is penny earned. That's what Benjamin Franklin said. But I sort of feel it's not quite that way, because there is something called taxes. So really, penny saved is equal to penny and a half earned, because penny and a half, if we earn, we have to pay almost 33% tax. 50 cents are pretty much, half of the penny or half the dollar is pretty much gone into that. So whenever you save a dollar, you should reward yourself that you have earned $1.50. If we look at that, then really, it encourages us to save more, not to go to Starbucks and not to, use chewing gum and so many other things which I can cite. Now, many people come to me and they say, well, we spend conservatively, but every time we look around, we just don't have enough, and we're living to pay check. So I suggest to them that they should start writing down, make a budget, and budget with the effort of saving. So just write down your daily expenditures, and then they come back and realize that, sure, I can cut here, I can cut there. I don't have to so many text messages. I don't have to go out and see so many movies or go to restaurants or something like that. So on page 29 and 30th, we talked about budget to save. How can we, eliminate some of the things which we don't have to do. Chapter 3 talks about investing, and that is something which I've been doing personally since 70s. And all I can say is that every penny you can save, please save and invest. Sooner you start and regularly you invest, that's the best way to invest. If you go to page 39 and 40, you will see, give an example that somebody called Sana invested $10,000, but she started way early. And then Mariam, who started a little late and invested $16,000, and somebody else started further late in life, had invested $72,000. It turns out that Sana, who invested $10,000, but did it early in life, like 16 years of age, end up having $1.1 billion, whereas person who invested $78,000 and had only 8 to 5. So the lesson here is that invest early, regularly, and you will accumulate a lot more money. In the book, I gave an example that when I was graduate students, like many of you, in 71, 72, 73, 74, I saved about $200 a month, and that money accumulated to be $10,000. If we invest that money at that time, it's a little more than about $2 million. And even with all the inflation, whatever we are living through, $2 million is enough money to have, which is just investing $10,000. So then I talked about the spending. I don't have to share with you how to spend money, but my way of spending is that we plan to spend. We want to spend money. We know that this expense is coming. A child has to go to college, or we have to buy a new car, or somebody has to get married, or kids have to get married. So we know that these events are going to come. So we should plan for them. And I've given several examples that if a baby is born, day number 1, you start thinking that when baby is 18 years old, they have to go to college, and college today is costing us X amount. So you make a plan, which the book is helpful in giving you ideas how to, invest each month or each quarter, or even each year when you get a tax refund, just put it away for that purpose. So plan to spend. Same thing. Let's say you want to buy a car. Nothing is better than a new car. So you plan to buy a new car. In 4 years, you save whatever amount you have to save to buy the new car in 4 years. But in the interim, that's what I did. You buy a good used car, and live with it. And then time comes after 4 years, you buy a car without any debt or any payment plan which comes with it. So please focus on planned giving rather than just impulse spending. Then last chapter is giving. Giving is very, very important. And since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made zakah as the third pillar, which is, I'm very passionate about it. It's really, why it is so important that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala choose to make it a pillar, that we want to see that among the Muslim community or the society at large, everyone has a decent way of living. And this is the way of sharing what God has blessed us with. And we, want to see everybody is living happily and at a reasonable level. Now, zakah, in my opinion, is not fully understood fully. We sort of know about it, we understand it, but I don't think we really grasp the idea that how to sit down and calculate what is zakah. In my book, I argue that my feeling is that we collect 10% of zakah, which is really due, which we should be collecting, which should really help to create a very, very healthy society. So the purpose of zakah is that everyone should have a decent way of living. It's not just giving, a few dollars here and a few dollars there, and person can get by with it. But it is a total system. Prophet ﷺ has said, you should give enough to one person that they don't have to come back to you at all. So they stand on their feet and they are, happy thereafter. If we cannot do that, then we can give them enough to be on their feet for 1 year. And if we cannot do that, then give whatever we can. Why 1 year? Because zakah is due on our investments or our earnings each year. So we have the distribution to be made. So I do feel that we should properly calculate and give out zakah. Now, historically, it has happened that people had zakah money calculated in their pockets, and they are going around looking for people who deserve zakah, and they could not find anyone who was eligible to receive zakah. So if it happened historically, it can happen now. So while I was researching for this book, I found one hadith, which is, it is better for a man to give a dirham as sadaqah during his lifetime than to give 100 at time of death. Now, many of us, we just kind of hold on to the money and say, well, this can be distributed as inheritance, or we are permitted to give away 1/3 of our assets at the time of death to anyone we wish, to non-inheritors, and we can give it to charity and so on and so forth. So my strongest request or argument is that we should give while we're living. Giving while living is really the way of living, because why to wait on that? It has nothing to do with that. We should not delay giving, because if we give out money now, so many people need scholarships, they need to buy food, they need to buy clothes, and we don't want to wait to help them out. And if I may say this, unconsciously we kind of create a circle of people who are in need, sitting there and praying for my death, that when he's going to die so we can get the money. That is not very comforting. I want people to pray for my health, not for my death. So really, there's no virtue of delaying and losing 100% or 100 times the reward by delaying the giving. Then we ask the question that, what is better? Is it better to leave for a child a trust account or a great society? So if we spend during our lifetime, we can redirect, and we can, do good, whatever activities we like to do, and leave a great society rather than a trust account. And if you want them to get MBA, most likely they're going to buy a BMW, and because we are not around to tell them, this is not the right thing to do. So at the last section, I've talked about wills and trusts, how each one of us should have a will. Some people could have a waqf, which is a personal trust. or a trust for the community. And I think it's worth reading it. What are the do's and the don'ts of writing a will? And I think you will find those to be of interest. So this book, of course, is written based on my own experience, and I feel that it can be benefit to others. And I hope that you will benefit from it. And all I ask is to pray for me. Thank you so much.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Mirza. Honestly, your book really hit home for me. First of all, you talked about who motivated you. And I read in your book how your father would tell you to do little things like turn off the lights and things like that. And honestly, it reminded me about my father-in-law, because we didn't grow up caring about those little things. But, after I learned that from my father-in-law, it really made a difference. Little things like that, being careful about how we use our resources. What I also like about your book, Dr. Mirza, is that you, even though, mashallah, you bring a wealth of experience and you deal with very large budgets. I believe some of your budgets are like in the billions, of dollars, but you made, the examples that you gave are like perfect for the ordinary person. Someone making, $1,000 or $2,000. I feel like, I want all of my children to read this. All the young people should read this. So it just, breaks it down, like, how much you spend on your coffee, on your parking, on your this. So I really like that a lot. And, the fact that you went beyond just this worldly life, and you talk about after we leave this earthly existence, what happens to everything that we have accumulated. And that's a very important thing to consider because, I'm watching people pass away, grandparents and parents, and I see, what's happening to all their, property and estates. It really does sit there. So I think that's excellent advice that you gave. Is there anything you would add to your book now that it's been out for a few years, and, any other advice that you would give to people?
Not really. Books seems to be pretty much stand on its own. I have written a second book, Heavenly Returns, which is a dialogue between Gary Moore, who's a conservative Christian and runs a financial seminary. He grew up in the South as a Southern Baptist, and I happen to know him and share many common ideas, common views about finances. And I present Islamic viewpoint, he presents the Christian viewpoint. And it's a dialogue, not telling who's right, who's wrong, but we let the reader kind of decide. So, since you mentioned about the estate, one other thing is which we have done personally for ourselves is that I talk about it as a family partnership in the book, and that is that we put aside almost approximately half of our assets into a family partnership, which is equally owned by our 4 children. And they already know.
About the foundation, Dr. Mirza, that you mentioned in the book?
Right. That's another entity. So the children, they already know what share are they going to get, and their financial well-being is tied together. So they are together not only as a family members, as siblings, but their finances are combined together, and they are learning, how to help each other. If one sibling needs more money, well, it's okay. That's what the kids, brothers and sisters are all about. So we let them, have some more, and among them, they have chosen one person to be responsible for their investments after me and my wife. So it's a very good process for them to kind of be trained and be ready for what they have to do in the event that we are no longer available. The other half, which me and my wife own, we have talked to the children, and we have told them that our wish is to give it to charitable organizations or charitable foundations. And that's where the Mirza Family Foundation comes in. So whatever savings, my 401k, my retirement, over time, we are moving into the foundation. And when we make a contribution, we get a charitable deduction. So it's a good way for us to, reduce our taxes and also move what we own into a foundation, which then will become an endowment for the family and to help projects such as TISA and others. So I think God willing, if I have a few more years to live, we should be able to complete this whole cycle where we can be proud of that we have an endowment which can support some of the activities.
MashaAllah, that's such a beautiful example. One of my favorite things you wrote about your family foundation is the way that you trained your children out. If they need help to buy a house, you loan them the money and you ask them to pay it back to the foundation.
Right.
So then it's benefiting everyone, but you're not taking any extra money and you're not asking them, how long it's going to take them. But that's such a unique idea. And I'm going to talk to my husband about implementing that, you gave the example of your daughter Asma and all. But thank you so much for this amazing, comprehensive book. It even has all the inheritance laws in there, things that we really need to know. And I'm going to ask Dr. Murad if he would like to, if he has any questions or discussion points for Dr. Mirza as well. You're muted right now, so if you can unmute. Yeah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you for having me. Dr. Mirza, it's a great pleasure to read a good book, and an even greater pleasure to read a good book and to speak with its author. Alhamdulillah, I was very glad to have been asked to say a few words today, being a part of the United Theological Seminary of the Twin Cities, and in light of the connection to the Islamic Seminary of America and the Islamic Seminary of America, TISA's connection to you, I'm glad, alhamdulillah, that this has brought me to this particular book, this book of yours. I should say that I'm not a scholar in this field. This is not my specialty. I'm in interreligious studies and in religion and the environment. So this is not my field, and nor do I speak from personal experience as a kind of expert, somebody with wisdom on the topic of financial management. Far from, perhaps as a negative example, perhaps. This is, but I can speak from my own vantage point. I've been asked to serve as a discussant, and I have a few things noted here. My notes are based on what I believe is the most recent edition of the book, which is also the abridged edition. This is a rare case in which I've read the abridged edition, and I very much intend to read the full edition after it. I really look forward to reading the full edition, Dr. Mirza. You have done such a great, I can hardly, actually, I'm about to get into the need for books such as this, and for shared wisdom such as this. And in fact, this is the point that I want to start with. What makes an ummah successful is its wisdom, in a sense, and obviously acting on its wisdom and the grace from God. And thank God for those who share their wisdom. It's not a collection of just individuals, the ummah, but there's something that connects all human beings. And so this book is to be praised and also appreciated very much by Muslims around the world, because it's a case in which somebody who's gained wisdom in a particular area is now sharing it with others, such that the ummah can now benefit as a result of the benefits of that particular person. And such books are terribly needed. And so Dr. Mirza's work on being financially prudent and how to do so, how to be financially prudent, is excellent. It is an excellent example of this kind of shared wisdom with the ummah. There are other examples that come to mind. Dr. Hilali Nuruddin, who's written a work called Letters to a Young Doctor, exploring and surviving a career in medicine. So somebody who's Dr. Dr. Hilali Nuruddin, who's like one of the most accomplished surgeons of the world, from what I've been told, has written a book. Now this Muslim surgeon has written a book for other Muslim surgeons and also just doctors in general to learn from. And we need this in every field, essentially. We need this really in every field. In philosophy, Dr. Said Hussein Nasr has written a young Muslim's guide to the modern world, not just philosophy, but religion in general, for understanding the modern world. And examples such as Dr. Jimmy Jones, who has done so much in communal efforts and now leading the Islamic Seminary of America, along with others, of course. This is an example of somebody accumulating wisdom, cultivating the proper approach to things in that particular field, and then sharing it with others. So alhamdulillah for these people who share their wisdom with the ummah, and then the ummah inshallah progresses as a result. And it's perhaps worth mentioning that there are a number of scholars who've written on Islam and economics who have written it with great insight. Among them, Dr. Walid al-Ansari and Dr. Zamir Iqbal. But now let me turn to this book. So what I have, Dr. Islam, what I have is a number of things in response to the book, and then we could move on into discussion.
We're good with time. Thank you.
All right. There's a pandemic in the Islamic world today, and especially in the increasingly modernized parts of the Islamic world. And that's that modern day Muslims don't know how to manage their finances. It's not just a problem of the broken families of the modern West, of the Americans, so to speak, of Americans who aren't Muslim. No, this is a problem now within the Islamic world, and increasingly so, of course, as it becomes modernized more and more. And that's because there's this loss of a traditional net, that if somebody, these examples of people who just go to the madrasa till they're 40, 50 years old is increasingly rare, because there is no traditional net that takes care of all of these people. With increasingly individualism being on the rise, no longer is this benefit of the wisdom of the previous generations and this relationship and so forth. So in short, there's a pandemic really in the Islamic world, Muslims who don't know how to manage their money. And these images of homeless people on the streets, that what a strange paradox, this richest country in the world has so many homeless people in the streets. Very soon you'll see Muslims on the streets. If we don't actually get our act together, you'll see many of them are Muslims, but you'll see many more of them Muslims on the streets if we don't actually get our act together. So this problem to which Dr. Mirza is responding is a very, very real problem. And this tending to financial prudence, increasing one's financial prudence, is important on a personal level for Muslims individually and their families, for them tending to their responsibilities, but also in another way, another kind of civilizational level. Colonization began with military efforts, but then it was reinforced with economic efforts. And for the independence and the maintaining of dignity of Muslims around the world, we need to be able to know how to be financially independent. So many Muslim countries are really on leashes held by Western hands because they're not financially independent. And so it's important for us to develop this financial independence. And we are so much better off if we read books such as Dr. Mirza's. I'll mention a few nuanced points that the Islamic, as a professor of Islamic studies, the Islamic world is neither ascetical in its character, nor is it greedy. of course. Now, there are ascetics within the Islamic world. There are examples, and there are people who develop much money. There are those examples, but for those who develop much money, for it to be within the framework of the Islamic teachings, the money is within the hands, but not within the heart. In short, so one can acquire much, but so long as it's in the hands and not in the heart. And there's also something else to be said about acquiring much money. There's this danger of spiritual laxness that comes with acquiring so much wealth. We feel like we're rich. We feel like we're comfortable. And I don't know about you, but I feel the greatest need to turn to God when things are not going well. And so I think I'm not the only one. And so that's a danger that we have to be conscious of as we try to increase our financial situations, how to improve it, and how beautiful a sight it is when you find somebody who has maintained a good financial portfolio, so to speak. Everything's taken care of. All of that person's dependents are taken care of, and that person has done his or her part in this world financially, and yet is not attached to that wealth. What a beautiful sight that is when you see that. And in fact, it's worth mentioning that the Prophet himself, ﷺ, was a trader. He traded. He traded. So was, as Dr. Mirza mentioned, Sayyidina Yusuf, also a manager of finances. We have these examples and these prophets. Imagine a religion with the prophets of that religion, with a number of those prophets being managers of finances, which speaks to the significance of this task, and that it's not something separate from religion ultimately. Of course, Sayyidina Sulaiman and Sayyidina Dawood and Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhim as-salam were also kings. And so, of course, I imagine there was that element. And it's also worth mentioning that in the Islamic world, traditionally, generally speaking, if in the Christian world, piety was primarily associated with the priests, in the Islamic world, the piety was often associated with the people in the bazaar. Interestingly, it's the people in the bazaar who, when they put, of course, you always find exceptions and bad people in every place, of course, but generally, as a general perception, I grew up in the Islamic world myself. There was this idea: you walk through the bazaar, you see all these people sitting down with their masbahas, with their subhas, just sitting down and just reciting Quran, and being very gentle people. And then also, you want to purchase something, they always put some extra for you just in case something's wrong with the mizan, with the weighing scale. Of course, people will try to rob you, all sorts of things also happen, but generally speaking, piety was often associated with the people in the bazaar, as well as, of course, with other people, such as other people too, but it's worth mentioning this. And now, it's important also in the discussion of finances to keep in mind. I think one of the most significant images in this, in at least for me, from our tradition, is that of tethering the camel and then having tawakkul. You might recall that once somebody walked into the mosque, or walked into a room where the Prophet was, and the Prophet asked, how did you get here? He said, I came by camel. And he said, the Prophet asked him, what did you do to your camel when you came? He said, I just let it be because I know that God will protect it. And the Prophet told him, no, go and tether your camel first, and then you have tawakkul. So he went and he tethered his camel, that is to tie the leg of the camel so as to make sure that it doesn't roam around. So the idea here is not to just have tawakkul, that, oh, God is going to open something for me. You might have lots of people who are just waiting for some fath, some opening. But no, you have to go and act. And then you have tawakkul, that God gives you something, that God protects you. And neither is the Islamic tradition, neither is a tradition that espouses, I've never heard within the Islamic tradition, a version of the prosperity gospel, which is worth mentioning. The prosperity gospel is this idea that if you do good, God will give you lots of money, and those who have lots of money are people whose prayers are people having lots of money is a sign of them being good people. It's not like that. Of course, you pray and God can answer, and God will answer, inshallah. But it's not that the more money that you have is reflective of how good of a Muslim you are. No, not at all. But of course, you are encouraged to be financially prudent and so forth. And I appreciated, Dr. Mirza, that you mentioned that you gave some explanation of what riba is. There's generally lack of understanding as to what riba is, and then it gets ridiculed because people don't really understand, like an interest rate. All right, let's just calculate it a different way instead of an interest rate. But the idea is that you have to pay it back, whatever you take on loan, regardless of what happens with the money, regardless of the success or failure, you have to pay this money back. But rather, the Islamic model is of shared risk, which I mean, if you just have that applied here in America, God knows the economy will look so different, so much less homelessness, so much less financial trouble. And nor is debt sinful in principle, but of course it's discouraged. But one thing that I feel, and this is a question that I shall ask you, Dr. Mirza, I sense that cryptocurrency, which is now a huge topic in finance in the world and a growing topic also among Muslims. You have Muslim athletes with cryptocurrency sponsorship. And of course, they're taken as role models by Muslims around the world. I am not a scholar in this, but I have a suspicion that this is haram. I'll say I have a suspicion. It's reifying virtual reality, which has no connection to, has little connection to actual practice, to this level of reality. Anyways, there's more to be said. I feel like I'm probably taking up too much time, so I could just skip through my notes.
You don't have to skip. We're still doing good.
All right. Well, Dr. Mirza, it's your fault. It generated so many good thoughts. I hope good thoughts. Of course, the benefits of this book is that it encourages us to cultivate a kind of financial prudence, to think with financial wisdom, not to just go about daydreaming, just spend however you want to spend, and just with the hope, oh, God will give us. That could have worked actually in some time. That could have actually worked in a traditional society, but in a capitalistic model, and the modern model in which all of these security nets of tradition have been torn apart. One can't afford to do that practically. And it's also worth mentioning that to think with financial prudence is also something that cultivates the remembrance of the fragility of creation, and thus of our own fragility and our own vulnerability. To go about not caring about saving money is in a sense it's a proud thing, a matter of pride then, if you really think about it, not being aware of your fragility and your vulnerability. No, we are fragile, we are vulnerable, so we should take precautions. And then another good aspect of this book is that it's many small things are mentioned. There are many small things that are in and of themselves very rich, such as they're very helpful, such as just this small idea. It's just in one sentence or so, one or two sentences in this version of the book that I have, establishing an emergency fund. Just even that idea itself is very important, let alone many of the other ideas. Of course, its emphasis on giving while talking about financial prudence and developing a good financial portfolio and so forth. Its emphasis on the Sharia is significant, of course. And I want to also thank Dr. Mirza for mentioning the environment. It's mentioned only a couple of times, and at least in this abridged version, but fortunately it's mentioned, thank goodness, because most people, when they think of finances, the environment is the last topic to come to their minds. And unfortunately, us Muslims, we are certainly among that category of people who give the environment our last thought, if any thought at all. And I appreciate that you mentioned animals as being our neighbors as well, and that when we think about where to invest and what to do with our money, there's this principle that one should not destroy nature unnecessarily. I appreciate that very much. And if only our Muslim businesses actually thought about nature. There's so much. Actually, our Muslim-owned businesses in the West, it seems to me, are not Islamic, but just Muslims operating modern businesses, secular modern businesses. You see the styrofoams that are used with no attention paid to what this means for nature, the lack of sense of beauty, just the beauty, which is Allahu Jamilun yuhibbul Jamal. God is beautiful and He loves beauty. No recognition of that in so much of Muslim businesses that look so tacky. That, like, I mean, even the non-Muslim modern businesses are less tacky compared to the Muslim ones oftentimes. I shall end this. I shall wrap this up. There's so much to be said, as well as, I mean, I appreciate, Dr. Mirza, that you referred to other religious traditions, the scriptures of other religious traditions, which is we inherit the scriptures of other religious traditions as well. And I am glad that you mentioned this. I shall end with one phrase, and it's a phrase by Sayyidina Ali, radiallahu anhu, alayhi salam. Sayyidina Ali, who himself, he was not a businessman nor a politician. He was many things. The founder of Islamic calligraphy and of a whole school of Islamic calligraphy and so many things. But he wasn't a businessman, but nonetheless, this applies to finances, of course. So I shall end with the saying of Sayyidina Ali, live as if you will die tomorrow, and as if you will live for 1,000 years.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Murad. So many great reflections there, Dr. Mirza. Is there anything that comes up for you as a response?
No.
I think you're muted.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Murad. You made my day. So I wish my wife was here to listen to you. So maybe she will believe me in what I tell her. So alhamdulillah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And the book, the full book is cut off out of print. We printed 3 times, and I will email to you the full book, so you have it. No, you had done a wonderful job. I learned a lot from your analysis. I just will add one more thing, that when I talked about zakah, I have spent quite a bit of time on talking about how to share with the community. And we take care of the family first, then with our cousins, uncles, aunts, brothers and sisters, and then we go enlarge the circle, go out to in-laws and others, and then a community at large. And one example I often give, part of the category of zakah is to help people relieve from debt. And I asked this question to myself: how will ever I find out that somebody is in debt? People are not going to come to me and say, well, I want to announce that I have a credit card debt and please give me your zakah so I can pay it off. It's not going to happen, and we should not allow it to happen. People have dignity and they should be respected. So to me, it means that each one of us, we have to be involved in the community, and we have to be so close and intimate to each other that we will know the inner information, feelings of that person. And we will come to know that this person is under stress because of debt, or that person may be needy or whatever. And then we should quietly help that person to pay off the debt. So really, it's a pillar. For example, that Islam you must have seen when there's a newborn in the community, we don't give them a box of diaper because everybody else is bringing diapers. So what we do is we give them a check in the name of Amana Mutual Fund, and we usually give it a sizable amount, $500 to $1,000, depending on what we think of the family. So many families have told me in the community that money which you gave us 10 years ago now has grown to so much, and we are adding more money to that. And this money goes into education savings account, in which you can contribute $2,000 per year until age 18. So the check is in Amana Mutual Fund name, so they cannot cash it. So they have to open an account in the name of the kid and deposit it. And really, it is a great way to give a gift of education to their child. And it encourages parents to contribute because they see statement comes every quarter and they see, oh, that $1,000 has now become $5,000. And, why don't we put some more by the 18, the person will have that. So education savings account is a beautiful way that we can help. I have 5 granddaughters. Each one of them have one. The oldest one is 15. And I believe last time we checked, she already has about $130,000 in her account. So if she wants to go to a state-run university, she has the money. She wants to go to Georgetown or private school, even then, because money will be drawn each year, so the rest of the money will be growing for 3 more years or 2 more years. So it's a saving just never hurt. And the last thing I would say is that delay gratification. Whatever you want to do today, go on vacations, kick your heels, you want to buy, a second car, whatever, learn to delay those gratification or hope to have better retirement, better education for your children, better life in the future. And saving would never hurt you. It always will come handy. And if you don't use it, you can always give it out to other people. Thank you so much.
Dr. Mirza, and I have a tiny question which you did touch upon, and it's a genius idea what you've done with your grandkids and with the newborn babies. Dr. Murad actually brought up something where he was mentioning that sometimes as we become more comfortable, we get away from our imam, our spiritual strength, and there's some kind of relationship there, and it kind of this I feel is true for people, but I'm concerned about the younger generation. Sometimes they're a little more privileged than we were. We had the immigrant parents, and we grew up watching one value system, but as we have tried to create a better life for the younger generation, that connection between as you mentioned, the dunya comfort, I feel like I've observed that it sometimes I feel affects their spiritual laxness at times, not always, but I have a concern. And I wanted to ask Dr. Mirza, how, you advise us to kind of keep trying to put those values into our kids. I mean, they'll never see what we saw, growing up, but, what can we do? Because their value system, financial value seems to be different than the parents.
Yeah, sure. I think this is a very, very good question, and it requires a lot of effort. And I give a lot of credit to my wife for contributing to the well-being of the children. So our children, they went to public school. We had Islamic school here. Somehow they did not fit in it, but we supplemented the Islamic studies on the weekend. We took them to our Islamic centers regularly. As far as teaching them Quran and Arabic is concerned, we had one sister come on the weekdays every Wednesday, I believe, and come and teach them. Then we involved them in the Islamic Center with us. We did not allow them to work for the Islamic Center because we didn't want them to attach voluntary work, social work with gaining money. We told them we just cannot do it, and so they learned how to volunteer. During the Eid holidays, we used to have them sell Eid cards at the masjid and earn money for the masjid, to save money for the masjid. And just now you mentioned about Asma, she's a character. One Ramadan, she was like 7-8 years old, and she's working now in the White House, mashallah.
Sure.
She was selling Eid cards, and one sister, she said, well, I don't have the money. So she was sticking around, and when somebody came to sell scarves, that lady has the money to buy the scarf. And she peeked into her purse. He said, you got money, you got to buy Eid cards. So they were trained to, to volunteer and raise money for the masjid. They never associated with this work, and we should be paid. One other thing we did was we had them, travel with us to different parts of the world. They went to all continents except Australia. And when they went to Africa, Zimbabwe, and South Africa, they saw the poverty. And they came back and they started collecting money for the poor people. But we didn't have to take them to Africa. We took them when we go to Chicago to attend the ISTAC convention. I just took them one day to south of Chicago, and then just showed them how the windows are broken and the beer cans are there and how people are living. And they were just shocked, to see that right in America, in the largest city, Chicago, you have poverty. So I think it takes time, it takes effort for us to, to do this. The other thing which has really helped is the company we keep. We were very fortunate to have very committed Islamic Ali brothers in our neighborhood. We had 10 families, Muslim families. We bought the land in the 80s and then developed 10 homes together. And some of us, we are still here. Some of us have moved out. And we used to pray Fajr together. And my son used to have the key for the basement. And we used to rotate to different homes. And it's a wonderful experience because we used to travel a lot. And when we travel a lot, then each other's family, their children, they all play together. They, took care of each other. So that also helped together. But of course, it has some negatives also. Everybody watched who's coming to which house and who's invited and why I'm not invited for dinner or something like that. But overall, it was a very positive experience. I think it's a combination, but a great effort done as a family, more so my wife. She gave up her profession as a medical doctor and devoted to the children. It's an effort. It's a lot of effort. If you can get them involved in the Islamic Community Center, I think they will inshallah do okay.
I feel so much better hearing this advice. Really, this has been such an enriching, enlightening, and wonderful conversation with both of you. And may Allah reward the work you've done. And you really put your heart and soul into the book, Dr. Mirza. I can tell from reading it. Being a fellow author, I know when someone really put all of it in there. So we do pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts this as a sadaqah jariyah and that it is widely used and implemented. And if you can let us know how to attain a copy of this book, Dr. Mirza?
The book is not available, but I will email you a soft copy, and I have the copyrights. So you can feel free to distribute to your students and anyone you wish, both books. So as soon as we finish, I will send it to you, inshallah. On Amazon, the bridge version is available. Other ones may be available as used copy, but not as a new copy. Yeah.
And also, Dr. Murad, thank you so much for joining us today and bringing your gems and bringing your insights and adding to our conversation here. We ask Allah to bless all of the wonderful work that you're both doing and also the work of the Islamic Seminary of North America, as well as United Theological Seminary. These are both amazing institutions doing great work. And thank you for your support of that, that both of you are doing and that our viewers and, everyone in these institutions are doing. Islamic Seminary of America, we have these amazing courses. The summer session is now open for registration. There are scholarships available, and we look forward to more people, benefiting from these institutes. And I think we have made it to just about 1 hour. So I think we'll call it a day, inshallah, on the talk. So Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much for all of the viewers joining us and for our guests. We'll end, with a short prayer. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wal 'asr, innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa 'amilus salihat wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam. Thank you so much.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.